In this video, I'm going to run through a few different types of buttons that I used in this controller that I built for my quadriplegic nephew. I'm going to walk through a couple different button types, what to look for in buttons, so that if you wanted to build a controller like this, you absolutely could. My name is Preston. Welcome to Enabled. Buttons. These are just arcade buttons, the kind of buttons that you would see inside of an arcade cabinet. And as you can see, they're pretty simple. There's two terminals, signal in, signal out, and then when you push the button, it connects the two terminals together, and that's what allows the signal to go through. These are two different types. They make several different types. These are both 28 millimeters in diameter. You can get them in several different diameters. I'm not sure why I went with these. I think this might be the more common one, so that's what I went with. There's a couple differences in the two buttons that I hold. One, as you can see, the black one is quite a bit longer, has a longer body on it than the white button. That is for installing in thicker panels. So I used 1/2-inch plywood when I built my first controller. So either one of these would work, but if you had 3/4-inch plywood, or if you had multiple layers of materials that you wanted to use, you might need a longer button body to install inside of that panel. The way these attach, these are threaded versions, so you would drill a hole in whatever your panel is, and then you would stick the button down in there, and then on the back side you would thread this nut on against the panel, and that would hold it in place. Same with this guy right here. The switches are different on these two buttons. You can see that the switch is built into this one, so you can't really remove it. This switch you can remove, so you just take it out like that, and then you drop it in the hole, thread it on, and then you reinstall this switch. One of the main differences, and this is personal preference, and this is one of the reasons I bought multiple buttons, is to see which one I like better. The white button has no click, so you can't really hear pressing this button. There's not really any response to it. It's just up and down motion. The black button in my other hand has a noticeable click to it, and that's because that's part of this switch right here. When you press down on it, there's a noticeable click, and you can feel resistance when you're pushing it in. I personally like the non-click one, but when I gave this to Hayden to try out, he liked the clicky one. So that just comes down to personal preference. Another option that you can get is concave buttons tops versus convex button tops. These are concave button tops, and that's all I have. I don't have any of the convex ones. Concave buttons are more common in the American arcades, from what I understand, and the convex buttons are more common for the Japanese style. Again, that just comes down to personal preference. They also make buttons that don't have the threaded features. They're pop-in buttons, so they have little features that pop into thinner panels, like if you're using thin sheet metal or maybe thin plastic, you could use those. I think these are a little bit more versatile, and I'm not a big fan of the pop friction fit anyway, so I went with a threaded version. But that's kind of an explanation of the different style of buttons that you can get, and of course these come in every different color that you can think of. When you order them, you can order them as groups of colors, or you can specify each individual color as you want. One thing I will note though, if you do buy buttons, I recommend getting the same type. One thing I found when I built my controller, which I used multiple versions to see which one I like best, but you can see on the white button the terminals are smaller than the one on the black button. And that's okay, you can still use both of these in the same configuration, but the terminals that you attach are going to be different sizes, so you're going to have to accommodate that. It's a lot easier to assemble if you have all the same terminals. That way you don't have to figure out which size of terminals are which and wire it up that way. One other thing to note is any of these buttons will work. It really mostly comes down to how you build it, so how thick your button needs to be. The rest is all personal preference. Diameters, if you wanted a smaller diameter to fit stuff into tighter spaces, you could consider that. Everything else is just personal preference, whatever you like the most. But any button you find out there is going to work. These are all very simple. Most of them are just 2 terminals and it's on or off. Of course, there are fancier ones that cost a little bit more money, that have lights in them that light up, LED, whatnot. You can go that route if you want to go a little bit fancier, but in the end, they'll all work for the purposes that we're using them for. Thank you for watching. Check out some of my other videos where I show you step by step on how to build this controller, and be on the lookout for future videos where I expand on this concept and do a whole lot more with the design. Thanks for watching, guys.